To many of our older viewers, you can cast your mind back to the middle of the US's ill-fated invasion of Iraq on the trumped-up charges of weapons of mass destruction. There was a particular character who was very, very unpopular in the world at the time, and that was the US Defense Secretary, Donald Rumsfeld. Donald Rumsfeld never saw a war he didn't want to participate in, and he was, at that point, the guy most responsible for the US's invasion of Iraq. And then at a press conference, he famously gave this speech.
Reports that say that something hasn't happened are always interesting to me, because as we know, there are known knowns. There are things we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know.
I've often thought about the speech that Donald Rumsfeld gave, because it became a bit of a meme, a bit of a joke for the time. You know, these things about known knowns, known unknowns, unknown unknowns. And everybody thought these are ramblings of a nutcase. But in actual fact, it's quite a good analytical tool. He had sort of opened the door a little bit on how they do analysis in terms of military intelligence. And I thought, hardly being a military intelligence sort of expert myself, I thought it would be useful to see if we can do a similar thing with the South African political parties, because we understand that the GNU is in the emergency ward and everybody is jockeying for positions. And I thought, let's see what we know and what we don't know about our political parties and even about South Africa. Let's see how it stands up. So let's go for it. Let's talk about our known knowns. These are things that we know. Okay, and we're going to deal with each political party. So just follow this. Let's talk about the ANC. What do we know that we know about the ANC? Well, we know for sure that they have in no way want to improve South Africa for its citizens. We know for sure that the ANC is only about retaining power. Not one thing that they've done for years, especially in the post-general election phase and into the government of national unity, has been about improving life for South Africans. Everything has been about power and money for the ANC, something like increasing VAT. They understand that it's going to make South Africans poorer, but it's good for the ANC. So what we know for sure is that the ANC is only about power and money for the ANC. We also know that the ANC will not take advice from anybody. It doesn't matter who is in their coalition, government of national unity, call it what you will, they won't take advice from them, especially if that party happens to be the Democratic Alliance. These are known things about the ANC. They won't listen to anybody. All the political parties in the country were unhappy with the increase in VAT, but the ANC are going to they will not take advice from any other party. Right? And we also know that they are absolutely committed to corruption. They keep on talking about renewal. They keep on talking about holding people to account. At the end of the day, the one thing that they don't do is actually do anything about it. We know that the municipalities are corrupt. They won't do anything about it. So those are the big known knowns about the ANC. Let's talk about the Democratic Alliance. We do know that they probably want a better South Africa for everybody. I think it's safe to say. We also know that where they govern, they've been quite effective. We've seen that in the Western Cape, as said many times, but then they've also done it in the KZN Midlands. They've done it in Midvaal and places around South Africa where they've governed. Generally, they've governed as well as what can be expected. What we also know about the DA is that they are very difficult to work with. And the word that keeps on getting attached to them is arrogant. And after a while, you can't deny it. every coalition that they've been part of, the coalition parties have walked away with exactly the same complaints. These guys never listen to us. They don't want our input. They want to govern as if they're in charge. So they are very difficult to work with. That we know for sure. They are very good at process. You know, nothing screams DA better than Home Affairs, where they run that, you know, with great efficiency, or backroom stuff where they really do very well, but they're very bad at marketing. So these are the knowns about the DA. What about Mkhonto weSizwe? It's a bit of a difficult one because they're fairly new on the scene. But what do we know about them so far? Well, there's no indication that says that they want South Africa to be a better place for its citizens. They've been only about the fight for positions within the party, even to the point where they haven't really contested anything nationally. So there's no indication that they want South Africa to be a better place. We know that Jacob Zuma says that they want MK to rejoin the ANC. That's why he says he started the venture in the first place. But yet Floyd Shivambu says they're a communist party and they're going to be a Marxist, Leninist, Fanoniist party. So what do we know about that? Not a lot. That there's a lot of contradictory statements that come out there. On the policy front, we know that they're committed to the expropriation of land, and they are committed to an increased role in South Africa for traditional leaders. They've made a big point about that. So that's what we do know about Mkhonto weSizwe. EFF, once again, no real indication that they want South Africa to be a better place. Right there, once again, it's all about the games that they play, where they have been in power. They haven't exactly shone. You know, they've been in power in some of the metros, in coalitions, but they haven't been the star guys, the guys that get out there and do anything. In actual fact, there's been the sort of hint of corruption about the EFF all along. What else do we know? Well, obviously they had the big fallout post the election where Julius Malema confirmed what we know about the EFF, and that is that this is a party for one guy to lead for the rest of his natural life. So this is not a democratic organization where it has some of the trappings of democracy, but not when it comes to ultimate power. So this is a one-man party for life. Like it or leave it, you're not going to see a second leader there. And we also know that the EFF want to move rapidly away from any form of Western influence. Their role models in the world are countries like Venezuela, Cuba. They're very friendly with Russia. They want to do anything that the West doesn't want. So that we know about the EFF. They want to expropriate all the land, and they want to talk tough and sing songs, but it's not to make South Africa a better place. Ironically, the other thing that we do know about the EFF is that their members in Parliament, their members have been quite hard-working, and they're prepared to do the hard yards. We can't fault them on that. They've had some great parliamentarians, and that's not just a new thing. So quite clearly, there's a bit of a disjuncture between what happens at one level and what happens at the other. Certainly in Parliament, they've been effective, but in the cities and the metros where they've been involved, they've been diabolical. What about the IFP? IFP say they want a better South Africa. I suppose they do. Very, very traditionalist party. And they seem to be prepared to work with any party. They don't make judgments at all. So they will work with the DA as easily as they'll work with the ANC, as easily as they'll work with the EFF. They have the one party that's had coalitions with just about everybody. And the other thing that we know about the IFP is that they seem to have no ambition to break out of their KZN stronghold. They want to be a Zulu party based in KZN, so that's what we know about them. Patriotic Alliance, they want a better South Africa. I think that's fairly clear. They do support property rights and free markets. once again, they seem to be quite comfortable in dealing with people that are even their ideological opposites. And they love having power, and they don't mind propping up some of the worst political arrangements. And this was obviously best on show in Johannesburg, where the Patriotic Alliance gave power to the ANC and the EFF and themselves. And they've been very comfortable that no service delivery has taken place in Johannesburg. So that's what we know about them. Then we're going to talk about the new parties that came on the scene, and especially recently with the budget, have stepped forward as potential suitors to the ANC in the absence of, in this impasse with the DA. And that's Action SA, Rise Mzansi, and Build One South Africa. These parties are quite similar, so I'm going to analyze them together. I think it's safe to say that all three parties really want South Africa to be a better place. They sort of want free markets. They sort of want property rights. Why I say sort of is they sort of want free markets, but they're all big fans of things like BEE. They sort of want property rights, but they also want, some kind of resolution to the land problem in South Africa, even if that means using the Expropriation Act. We also know that all of these parties have said in different ways that they're very wary of the ANC and they're very wary of the DA, and they're uncomfortable in dealing with either of them. ANC, they understand what the ANC stands for in the corruption and so on. The DA, they understand that the DA can be bullies. What are our known unknowns? What do we know that we don't know about those parties? You'll get the drift in a second. With the ANC, we have got no idea who their next leader is going to be. There is a battle royale that's raging. Paul Mashatile has come to the front, but we know that Fikile Mbalula wants to be leader. There was even talk about Gwede Mantashe. There was a leader about Ronald Lamola. It's a mess. We don't know who their next leader is. We also have to say that after all these years, we still don't understand what their ideological or economic leanings are in the ANC. Other than patronage and an old-fashioned extractive political system, ideologically they seem to be all over the map. They say one thing and do another. They say they want free markets, but they won't free up markets. They say they want to protect property rights, but then they don't look like they want to protect property rights. They 1 minute look like they want to be a modern party, the next thing they don't. So very, very confusing to get a political and an ideological picture out of the ANC. So that's why that falls into the category of stuff we know that we don't know. Democratic Alliance. There, once again, there's talk about a leadership change. Once again, we don't know who that leader will be. It's not like they've got a deputy waiting in the wings. That is going to come up at a conference, and we don't know who that's going to be. What we don't know about the DA is if they can break their cycle of arrogance. It's been a problem for as long as they've been a significant party. Nobody can say whether it's ever going to end and they're suddenly going to start speaking to people. And then the other thing that we don't know about the DA is would they ever be prepared to make the changes that would make them more appealing to the majority of South Africans? Nobody can answer that. They say that they're a representative party. They say they're the most multiracial party in the country. They say a lot of things. But the bulk of South Africans don't trust them because they haven't seen that change in action. What is it that we know that we don't know about Mkhonto Wesizwe? Well, we don't know what happens after Jacob Zuma. The man is in his 80s. There's a lot of people that say when he dies, it's the end of MK. We don't know. We don't know what the plan is. They're not going to have a leadership conference. So we don't know if there's even a party after him. So therefore, we have no idea who their next leader would be. It's a party full of compromised people. It almost reads like a bibliography of the Zondo Commission reports. Everybody there seems to have a problem with the law. We don't know what MK's leadership would look like with all of these compromised people. It changes all the time and nobody's been given serious responsibility. We even know that Dudizile Zuma, very influential in the party and her father's favorite, was having a problem with Floyd Shivambu, who sort of seems like number 2 in the party and their Secretary General. So we don't know a lot about that party. Do we know what MK's economic policy is? I have seen statements from them that sound ridiculously communist, and I've seen statements from them that sound ridiculously capitalist. We have got no idea what the economic system looks like under MK. EFF. We have no idea what happens in an EFF without Julius Malema. All the other leaders of significance have been booted out of the party. It seems that's the way he likes it, so therefore what we know that we don't know is what the party looks like should Julius Malema not be around. Now, we also don't know whether they are a non-corruptible party. There's always that sort of smell about them. In all these metros where they have had a little bit of power, there's always been a question mark around it, and we will always remember the VBS scandal. We don't know if they'd be very good if they were a party in power. They've never had power by themselves. They've never seemingly made a difference where they are in power. And you never know what they would be like if they had power. The IFP, what do we know for sure that we don't know about the IFP? We don't know if they have any interest in growing their party and what that growth would look like. We also don't know if they would be able to replace Mkhonto Wesizwe if the Mkhonto Wesizwe falters. Let's look at the Patriotic Alliance. There, once again, we've got a question mark around their leadership. Gayton McKenzie is a big, larger-than-life figure. Is there another leadership candidate other than Gayton McKenzie? Are there new leaders? Are there people down there who are prepared to do it? What happens in a Patriotic Alliance without Gayton McKenzie? I think that's a question that we would have to worry about. And then, is there crossover appeal? We understand that that some of the appeal, most of the appeal of Patriotic Alliance is around Gayton McKenzie and some of his statements and his antics. But is there a broader appeal that could make them a significant political party? And then once again, similarly, could they govern well? We know that they've got involved largely with the ANC in governing certain structures, and it's been a mess wherever they've been. Would they be better if they were by themselves? What about Action SA, Rise Mzansi, Build One South Africa? We don't know if these parties are for real or if they're just better, more sanitized versions of the ANC. Their policies seem to suggest that they're just the same ANC policies, just with nicer packaging. And of course, what we don't know is whether they could resist the trappings of power. You know, that when you do get that blue light, will you be able to still govern as well as you could? Then we want to look at the stuff that we know, we don't know, and there's a lot on the list. So let's just have a look at what we don't know. The unknown unknowns. ANC. What happens if they had to lose power properly? If next election comes along and they get 20% and suddenly they are sent to the opposition benches, what does that look like? Would they accept that outcome? Would they be an opposition party? Would they fall apart? Or would they try and hold on to power in any means possible? They couldn't be an effective policy, effective opposition in the Western Cape. The ANC has got great relations with countries like Iran, Russia. Do they play that card if they lose power? These are things that we don't understand. One of the things that we don't know about the ANC are unknown unknowns. Could they ever become a good government? Could they, if they had a strong enough leader that actually cracked the whip, put people in jail for corruption? Could the ANC become a good government? We just don't know this. What are the unknown unknowns about the Democratic Alliance? They seem to have overinvested in the Western Cape. They moved their head office to the Western Cape. They seem to have no stomach for the fight in some of the more hotly contested places like Gauteng. What happens if they lose power in Western Cape? Could they deal with that? These are things that we definitely know that we don't know. We don't know if anybody could replace Helen Zille. She seems to be the puppet master that sits at the back. She's been at the helm now for many, many years. What does it look like when Helen Zille goes? Here's an unknown about the Democratic Alliance. What happens if they did find the charismatic leader that suddenly started to appeal to South Africans across the board? They could become quite an effective political party. We don't know because they won't do it. We also don't know what would happen if the Democratic Alliance became more user-friendly. All of these alliances that they could have been in, all of these coalition governments that they could have been in, it's just not happening because they are such a difficult party to deal with that nobody knows will give them the benefit of the doubt. Now, we do know that they have got a record of governing well. What we don't know about the DA is what happens if they suddenly had a change of attitude and they became more user-friendly and easy to work with. They could become a real political threat. Mkhonto weSizwe, what we don't know about that party. Is it just a family project? A Zuma family project? It was touted at the beginning, but we just don't know that for sure. Of course, the biggest concern about Mkhonto weSizwe is could they turn violent? We know that they were all over the July 2021 riots, which were devastating to KwaZulu-Natal, cost 350 lives. They're the one party with a tendency towards violence. We don't know if they couldn't just become a force for violence in South Africa. And also what we don't know about Mkhonto weSizwe is could they disintegrate before the election? We've said many times that they could be a more modern day version of COPE. You have these parties racked by infighting, everybody taking everybody else to court. It could happen. What about the EFF? What do we know what are the unknowns about the EFF? They've also threatened violence many times. They threatened to cut the throat of whiteness. Would they ever do it? We don't know for sure. We also don't know whether the EFF could merge with the ANC. There's talk about them getting into a coalition. In this case, it's very close to home. They come out of the ANC. Could there be a merger between the EFF and the ANC? And lastly, what we don't know about the EFF is, should Zuma disappear and let's just say Floyd Shivambu was in charge of Mkhonto weSizwe, was this always the plan all along to get the two of them, to get these two parties together? We don't know, we don't understand it. The unknowns about the Patriotic Alliance, they could be consumed by the ANC, could happen, or they could form Moonshot Pact 2.0 with a new user-friendly DA, Action SA, Build One South Africa. This is stuff that we know that we don't know. While we're talking about those parties, Action SA, Rise Mzansi, Build One South Africa, what the unknowns with those parties is they are close politically and ideologically to the ANC. Could they be consumed by the ANC? Let's say they're going to coalition with them now. Pretty soon you're becoming part of the furniture. What we know that we don't know about those parties is, could one of them break out of the pack? We've got them all down there in the nether regions with a couple of seats, 6 seats, 2 seats, 2 seats. Maybe with the work that they're doing in Parliament and their better approachability, one of those parties could become a force in South Africa. The biggest unknown about those parties is that one of them could be the future of South Africa. So there's a lot that we know about our political parties and there's a lot that we don't know. But it helps to remember what we do know about our parties and what we don't know about our parties, because it helps us to analyze them better. And that's what we want to do on the State of the Nation. Well, the one thing we do know for sure is that Pace Car Rental has been a great partner to this show, and we'd like to thank them for that. And we also know that We need our subscribers, so subscribe to this channel, and we'll see you again on the State of the Nation. Thank you for watching.